Have you ever met someone whose mere presence made you better? Someone who lit up a room and changed the atmosphere around them. Today, we share the story of a remarkable woman from Baton Rouge who embodied those very qualities and made a lasting impact on her community. That is, until her life was tragically cut short. In this episode, we delve into the life and the untimely death of 23-year-old Christine Moore, an LSU graduate student who went missing on May 24th, 2002. A month later, her remains were discovered, marking the end of a heartbreaking mystery. Christine's disappearance occurred during a time when 3 serial killers were operating in the area. Unfortunately, due to a lack of DNA evidence, Christine's case went cold. Was Christine a victim of Derrick Todd Lee, or was her murder an isolated incident? I'm Karen Chawla, and in this week's episode of Louisiana Unfiltered, we're investigating Christine's case and speaking with her sister and cousin, who are breaking their 20-year silence to discuss the profound impact Christine's murder had on their family. Their insights shed new light on a tragedy that continues to haunt those who loved her. This is Louisiana Unfiltered. Welcome back, everybody. We are joined by Christine Moore's sister, Kathleen, and her cousin, Bryant Moore. Thank you both for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
I want to first start with, tell us who your sister was. Let's honor her first.
Okay, Christine. Christine was an exceptional human being. It was like having 3 parents in the home. Mom, Dad, and Christine. She knew her role. She knew that she was the eldest out of 7 kids. So she was always there to help out, to help raise, to do whatever she can to keep 7 of us in line. And she taught us a lot of things. She taught us a lot of values. And she engaged with all of us, and we adored her. We really adored her. And she was a leader wherever she went. At home, she was a leader. In school, she was a leader. She graduated valedictorian of her high school class. Very intelligent person. She was also musical. I come from a very musical family. We come from a very musical family. And Christine had that genetic makeup for music as well. She was the drum major of her high school band, you know. So whenever she had the opportunity to step up and make a difference, she always took it. And she loved working with kids. Every summer, she volunteered for summer camps. And she was a leader there as well. She loved children, and she loved making an impact. And wherever she went, she did that all the time.
Wow.
And really one of the first people that I felt truly inspired by. And I'm also a very musical person. I'm also a teacher. I'm a elementary music school teacher, and I remember thoughts of Christine when she was young and how she did it. She pursued it. She pursued music just because she wanted to. She just had the love for it, and I was so inspired by that I, at a young age, I said, I want to do that, you know, just because I saw her doing it. And I remember when she picked up the saxophone, and I was like, what? I didn't know Christine plays the saxophone. Like, it was just so amazing. And she would play every Christmas for us, you know, and she was also a piano player. So because she was just an intelligent person, whatever she did, she always put her best foot forward, you know, and as the eldest of 7 children, that was just something for us to look up to all the time. So I mean, when I think of her, I just think of how exceptional she was and how just a bona fide leader she was, and the sacrifices she made, you know, to help around the house and to keep us in line. I remember the first time she was teaching us about like earning things, like work hard, you have to work hard to earn things in life. And I remember I was younger, and she would start assigning chores to all like 7 of us. You do this, you do this, you do this. And we did it, you know, and I remember she gave me some money for doing the dishes. And that was the first time anybody gave me money to do anything. And yeah, and she did a lot. She did a lot for us. She taught us a lot. She was a teacher for us too. And her and I would bond a lot too, because she would do my hair. So she was a hairstylist. She was so
Good
many things. She
Lord.
wore so many hats, you know. And she would do my hair, and we had a hot comb. Remember hot comb?
Oh, yeah.
And like she'd hot comb my hair, and all of my sisters. And she would when we were younger, she would tuck us in at night. You know, she would read stories to us. I remember she had all like 4 of my sisters in the tub at the same time, you know, when we were younger. Like, she was just a go-getter, you know, and it's sad that her life got cut so soon. You know, she was only, I think she was 21 or 22, and she was working on her master's at LSU for social work, and I know she would have flourished in that field, you know, because she knew her calling. She just knew what lights her up, and how to impact people. And it's a really sad thing. And but in the life she lived, it was very very intricate, very fulfilling.
I love
for
how
all of
you-
us.
I love
Yeah.
how you light up talking about your sister.
I do, yeah. And I every day I think about her, every single day.
Good.
You know, I was 14 or 15 during the time that it happened, but yeah, not a day goes by I don't think of her. You know, and I have her picture up in my house on a wall. As soon as you walk in, she's right there on the wall. As soon as you walk through the door, it's her that you see. So, but yeah, she's an incredible person. You know, so
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's been 22 years, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But, Bryant, same thing. Kind of walk me through your best memories, and who was Christine Moore to you?
And I have to tell a story about her, and it kind of ties into everything Kathleen said, because you got to understand, like I told you, Christine was younger than I was, so I didn't get to know her when she was a kid. But you fast forward to she was maybe 22 years old, and I was 30, 32, somewhere in that range. And the way I met her is she was either right before she graduated undergrad or right after. She was deciding on what to do next. You know, she had mentioned law school. She had mentioned, social work and all. And it was either her dad or my sister said, your cousin Bryant lives right there in Baton Rouge, and maybe you ought to give him a call. Just pick his brain. He went to LSU, and that's how we met. She would call, and we had a few conversations. And one day, I told her, said, you know what? Whenever you have a chance, why don't you just come to the house, and we can chat in person. And this is how, you got to keep in mind, now, I hadn't seen her since she was maybe 5 years old. Everything Kathleen said about Christine's life, I picked that up in like 10 minutes. She was just a very attractive to begin with, but very humble, very authentic. She had great energy. She was very positive and just bright. People can be smart, but she was bright. I mean, there was no topic you could bring up when she was like 21, 22 years old. There's nothing I could tell her that she couldn't sit there and philosophize about, and I was just so intrigued by her. It's like, man, this is like, you don't really need my help. You don't need my influence. You'll be fine with whatever. And after she left, I called my sister Denise. And I said, hey, I just met Christine. I said, do you know her? She's like, of course I know Christine. I said,
my cousin.
Yeah. And I said, so what do you think? She's like, what are you talking about? And I said, I've never been more impressed with a young person. Not that I was that old, but I've never been more impressed with a young person than I was with her, just because she was just so far ahead of what you would expect someone, so much poise, and I was just so impressed with her, and we just became friends after that. So we talked from time to time. She would call and update me on what she was doing, as far as what her decision was about school and things like that. Just checking with me, and it wasn't long after that she came up missing.
So let's go ahead and start talking about that. May 24th, 2002. Mm-hmm. Walk us through that day.
That was a very traumatizing day. I still remember it very clearly. I remember it very clearly. We got a phone call, and my dad was on the phone, and I wasn't in the room, but I could hear the conversation going on, and and I heard just something just fell to the floor, and I ran. I was like, "Oh my God, somebody fell on the floor," and it was my mom. She just, toppled over. She was on the floor in tears, crying. Just that news was so shattering for her, and she went through a really rough ordeal after that. I'd never seen her happy again. That was the final day I had seen her happy, and she admitted many times that she would never be happy again, and she wasn't. And I remember she was on the floor. She was having a breakdown, and she was crawling. She was crawling, trying to get herself together, and it took a while. It took a while. We ran to her. We were all there helping her and trying to help her get up and, soothe her in any way that we could. But it was just a conversation that turned into other things and other reactions and other feelings. And it just brought us all to a complete halt where we were, a complete halt, and we were all traumatized by that. It was the biggest shock of our lives to this day.
So that was the day that you got news that Christine is missing.
Yes, because, well, my mother, for her, of course, I think she was just thinking what was the worst that could happen. That was the fear that Christine would not be found alive, and I think that thought just came to her so immediately that it broke her down. But yeah, it was just something that we all had to learn to cope with, and we really had to come together, and so, but we had a lot of questions. We had a lot of questions about what happened, where was she, why was she by herself, what time of day was it? But we were just so shocked, and that shock lasted for years, it just until we could get any answers, but we never found out who did it. So because we didn't have any closure, we had a hard time processing all of it, especially my mother. So it took the hardest toll on her, but everyone in the family, we all had our own way of grieving. But my mother, I'd never seen her like that at all.
And both of your parents have now passed.
Both of them have passed. And my mom is gone because of Christine. I already know that. We all feel that way because she never could cope. She couldn't cope from it. She couldn't process what happened. And her grieving was just daily. And she wanted to leave. She wanted to be with Christine. And she said that a lot. And eventually I think she just withered away, and her heart was just so broken, and she couldn't come back from that,
And it's been 22 years, and you still don't have any answers.
No, we still don't have any answers,
Bryant, fill me in on that day. So you guys have kind of connected now, and how does your family find out this news?
We found out pretty soon after, and I just remember for me, because I was almost at a distance because I wasn't in New Orleans. And I just remember initially I was in denial. I just it was really early, and I just remember thinking, she'll show up. There's an explanation for this. It'll work out. And I don't know how long it took before I realized, okay, this may not turn out well, maybe whether it was 3 days or a week or so. But I think initially I just didn't want to accept that something like this could happen. And then, maybe a month and a half later, then once they found her remains, that's when it really just set in. And I kept thinking I didn't have any kids at the time, and as Kathleen is talking about her mom and all, I just kept thinking about their family, because I had siblings, and I just couldn't imagine what that would be like, just not knowing. Every day you wake up, how do you go to bed at night when you just don't know, especially for her parents and all. So it was just bad for everybody. It was a really hard time for everybody.
And this is a time in Baton Rouge where there were 3 serial killers operating: Jeffrey Guillory, Sean Vincent Gillis, and Derrick Toddley. So did that cross y'all's mind for your family when you got the news that she's missing? Was that the immediate thought, or what was going through? What were the conversations?
Well, they looked at several suspects. At the time, they had questioned her boyfriend a lot, and who also he actually recently passed away a few years ago, but he got questioned a lot. I didn't know that there were 3 serial killers out at the time. I was just hearing Derrick Todd Lee, and and I thought, well, he's the prime suspect, and mind you, I was still 14 or 15 at the time, and I was more about making sure that my mother and my father were okay and the rest of my siblings were okay. I wasn't thinking so much about who killed her. We were still grieving a lot. These questions for me didn't come until a little later, where I was able to start digging a little bit more about Derrick Todd Lee and who he was, and who he killed at the time that Christine went missing. But as far as the thoughts of how she died and who could have possibly killed her, that didn't really hit me until later on. But from my other siblings, I know these were conversations that were being had, especially my older siblings. There were conversations that were being had about it. But I wasn't aware that there were 3 serial killers out at the time.
So roughly 3 weeks later, your sister's remains are found.
Yeah.
Brightside and River Road. That's near LSU, but it's not. It's considered, I guess, if you want to call it off campus. It's a few miles off campus. Mm-hmm. Her remains are found there, and at this point, it was obvious that her remains had been there a while. The coroner's office even said that animals had gotten to some of her bones. However, her skull was completely intact. The coroner's report revealed that it was blunt force trauma that killed her. Tell us about what it was like at that point to get that news.
Oh, yeah, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. We just couldn't process, how could anybody do something so horrible to her? And we thought about the pain that she had to have gone through, the fear that she had to have gone through, and it was just earth-shattering for us to try to put ourselves in her shoes and just think about what the anxiety, the stress that she was under during her last final moments, and for her to go out the way she went out was very, very traumatic for us. My dad received a phone call. I think it was Father's Day. But he got a phone call saying that it was a match. It was a DNA match, and that he had to come and pick up her bones from the coroner's office. And he did that. He got in a car. He went to the coroner's office. They had her bones in a bag, and he drove back with her bones in a bag.
I cannot imagine.
He went by himself to do that, but yeah, and it
Your
was
living, breathing daughter
in a bag of bones. It was holding a bag of bones. And think about what that was like for him. What that was like for him, and it was hard. It was hard for him. He struggled too.
Well, of course,
he struggled with this,
but he had to also take care of your mom.
He had
and
to.
6 siblings or 6 kids.
Right. And my dad was very strong. He was a very strong man. Vietnam vet, also very intelligent guy. And did everything for his family, and it was knowing that my dad had to do something like that. It was like, I couldn't think like, well, why does he get all this strength to do it? But it was a strength that he had passed on to all of us, and it was just, and I still think about it. Like, I still think about what that was like for him, and how that played out for the rest of us, as we got older. But having, received that phone call that her bones were found behind a church. I think it was behind a church. Mm-hmm. And people were saying that, people in the church were complaining about animals that were headed towards the church and that were, snooping around, and they didn't know why. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they called police, and the police came out and saw that, human remains were there. But it was just tragic, heartbreaking. But most of all, just what she went through in her last moments, like, why did she have to go out that way? Someone like her, no one deserves it. No one deserves that. But Christine and everything that she stood for, and the kind of woman she was, we were questioning God, like, God, why would you let something like this happen to her? And in the way that it happened, in the manner that it happened,
There's no answers.
Yeah. Like, why, and because there were no answers, there was no closure. All we had were thoughts of what could have happened, and, but we can't say it was God's will. To this day, I will never say that was God's will. I mean, she lived a great life. She influenced so many people. Like, she was an inspiration to a lot of people. But still, at that age and the manner of it was just, you can't put into words. You're just left with unanswered questions. You're left with, thoughts of what could have been. What could have been for her. And it's unfortunate, very unfortunate. And it's not fair, it's not fair for something like that to happen to her, So we dealt with a lot. We went through a lot of trauma after that, and that was the worst part. That was the worst part, knowing that she went through that she went through it, pain, suffering.
Let's back up. Do you know the specific details of what actually happened?
The only thing I'm aware of is that she went missing after she went for a jog. She liked to jog along the levee. And that they told us her car was found and her identification was left in the car. But she was nowhere to be found. That's all I knew. That's all that was shared with me.
And the other problem with that was that LSU PD recovered that vehicle, but at that time they didn't know anything, so it was never taken as far as evidence goes.
Okay. Yeah, that I didn't know.
Yes. Bryant, what about you? I mean, you're a little bit older at this time. What did your parents share with you about what happened?
Well, I was getting most of my information from my older sister, and it was really just a matter of, she was gone, and there wasn't a lot of evidence, a lot of details. There wasn't a lot to go on, but it was very unusual that, we knew she didn't just run away, or we knew it wasn't anything like that. And once her remains were found, of course, the thing we didn't want to think about is was it one of the serial killers or anything like that, just because of the frequency of the killings. There's just a lot going on, but a lot of people I know family wise, we did think it was probably, she may have been one of Derrick Todd Lee's victims.
Why?
Just because And I don't even remember if he had been caught at that time. But so I wouldn't say
No.
Derrick Todd Lee. Yeah, it was.
He
it
was
was
not.
We just because her age, just as an LSU student, you know, there's just
A lot of similarities.
That would make sense. And the
Yeah.
fact that the way she came up missing, you know, she wouldn't just abandon her car, you know. And I think for me, the skull fracture, you know, that the medical examiner pointed out, to me that pointed to, you know, obviously a struggle, a fight, and things like that. And at that time, there were some details on how other women had died.
And let me point out that till this day, there is no DNA evidence that was found on Christine Moore that could link her to Derrick Todd Lee. However, in fact, one of the recent podcasts we just discussed 10 different women whose bodies were found, and those cases remain open. But one of the detectives, the way he explained it, is victimology, that you have to look at the way a lot of these women died, a lot of the similar manners they were left in. Well, in Christine's case, you have it to where she's about that age. She was 22, which a lot of these women were young adults. They kind of were around the LSU area. The other issue I think that officials had said back then was that her seat in her car was pushed all the way back. And that was one of the other reasons they believed it was Derrick Todd Lee and not Sean Vincent Gillis, that Derrick Todd Lee was a bigger man. However, they were never able to find any DNA linking Derrick Todd Lee to Christine Moore's death. And since then, Derrick Todd Lee has also died. Do you feel robbed of closure? Justice? I always say that
Justice,
you don't.
yes.
I don't feel
Justice,
you
yes.
ever get closure.
Right.
But justice, that a part of you wants to know if it really was Derrick Todd Lee.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
just need to know it.
Oh, yeah, we definitely feel robbed of justice. Now, when it comes to closure, I think we all just personally had to, you know, find our way to create some kind of closure for ourselves, you know, for our own personal reasons. I've had to make peace with things, you know, about her and her leaving us so suddenly, and several of my siblings have had to do the same thing. But as far as justice, yeah, we do feel robbed of it. I personally feel robbed of it, you know. But what can they do? You know, like, there's nothing out there to link anybody. There's no video. There's nothing.
Exactly.
Absolutely nothing. So what can anybody do? You know.
And this was 22 years ago. A lot has changed in 22 years as far as investigating a murder or investigating bones that are found. Back then, not every single person readily had a cell phone to where you might find video. Nowadays, an argument, somebody has it.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a business that had a video that was rolling or a security camera that was rolling. But in this case has truly gone cold.
Yeah, yeah. And now, well, if I can backtrack it, I when I really think about it, robbed of justice, that's I don't know if I can truly say that it was that, you know, because what can anybody do? You know, there was what justice can come forward, you know, for this, because there's nothing there for anyone to come forward with, or, you know, so is it an actual robbery of justice? Now, when I think about it, maybe not, I don't know. But there's still so many just unanswered questions, and it's probably going to stay like that, you know, forever. So it's you can only do so much, like, personally, to, I guess, you know, to cope with things, and to come to a place of peace within ourselves. And, you know, I guess, though, I don't know, those that knew her, but I just, at this point, what can I really say? You know, like, at this point, you know, 22 years afterwards, with nothing to go on, or nothing to lead with, it's just I guess I'll find out when it's my time, and I'll ask I'll see Christine again and
But in the 22 years that she was here, from everything, the way you guys describe her, this was a woman put together. Mm. This was a woman who knew what she wanted in life.
Yeah.
And she was on the right track and she was moving forward. So you had 22 years with her, but those 22 years were so profound that she made a lasting impact on you, to the point that you said you carry her with you every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's never going to change. That's never going to change. Christine was just a very profound person, and I wish she had more time so more people can get to know her, and the things that she would have done in her career, for other people. And I know there's a tree that LSU, a School of Social Work, planted for her. And I remember when they dedicated the tree to her, we all made a trip out there. And a few years ago, I went to see the tree, and it's massive oak tree, I think. It's a massive oak tree, and has her plaque there right in front of the School of Social Work. But there's so much she could have done with her life, and to think about all the things that she could have done, Yeah. She wanted to be a mother one day, she had so many dreams, so many unfulfilled, things that she just was just taken away from her, stolen from her. And it's still heartbreaking, and it's still heartbreaking, but I can still smile about all the things that she did in her life, and that she did for us, and that still impact me as an adult.
Good.
So she left a lasting legacy.
I can see that. Your smile is worth $1 million when you talk about her.
Yeah.
Bryant, did you guys have conversations within your families, your siblings, your parents, that Derrick Todd Lee could be this person? And for our listeners who don't know, Derrick Todd Lee was a serial killer in the Baton Rouge area. He was arrested, served life behind bars, and he was convicted of the killings of 7 different women.
In my opinion, I think until he was until they actually caught the serial killer, we did, not just amongst family, but just amongst people in Baton Rouge, we did think there was a very good chance that that Christine was one of his victims. And ironically, I ended up on the jury for Derrick Todd Lee. I was selected as one of the alternates. So as an alternate, you sit through the entire trial. You just don't get to deliberate. And what I would say is, just based on everything we saw, just based on the different women that we know were victims of Derrick Todd Lee, his MO. He befriended, he had this way about him that he was a bigger guy, but he seemed friendly. You could even see that in court. He just had this easy way about him. And Christine was a very friendly person. I don't think if he had approached her that she would see him as somebody that she would be afraid of. But just based on so many different things we saw in the trial, to me it seemed like I would not be surprised. We'll never know. For sure. We'll never know. But it really, to me, based on everything I've seen, I would not be surprised if he were responsible for it.
Wow. When you're talking about the MO, can you give us some specifics that when you're sitting through this trial and you hear specific things said or shown, that it was an epiphany moment for you where you said, wait, I wonder if this is the same thing that happened with Christine?
Yeah, throughout the trial, a lot of times they don't just spell it out for you when the lawyers are talking. They don't spell it out, but they paint a picture of what could have happened and what was most likely. And when you hear family members talk about their daughters and sisters that were his victims, they had this had a lot of, they had similarities in their personalities as far as being friendly, confident, and things like that. But I think there was one of Derrick Todd Lee's victims that lived. He didn't kill her, but she was able to tell the story of how he approached her and He was looking for directions or a phone number or something like that. And he was friendly enough where she opened the door. She didn't really feel threatened by him or anything. And then when he realized she was vulnerable and she was alone, that's when he attacked. And I think what made me think about Christine is that if she were out jogging at the levee or something like that, and he approached her, she probably, like I said, she probably just wouldn't have been afraid of him just for no reason, not knowing what was in store. So just the way he would approach people and stalk them and things like that, and also, just the fact that, there was a skull fracture. I mean, he was, he was pretty violent. He throughout the trial, you realize he did hit a lot, he did smash women's heads and stuff like that.
And that was what the coroner's report revealed in this case. Like I was saying, even though animals had gotten a lot to her bones, officials said that the skull was very much so intact, and that's what they were able to look at and reveal that it was blunt force trauma that most likely killed her because she had a huge gash to her head.
So they weren't able to find any other, like, there's no skin, nothing, hairs, just bones? That's what I never understood. Like, was she that badly decomposed? And
but at you have to understand, nearly 3 weeks later when her body is found, you have the people going to the church saying, hey, we have a lot of animals all of a sudden coming out. Those animals have got to those bones. But with Louisiana weather, this is June, you need to be outside for 2 days and your body just starts decomposing. I say your body, but a body, should I say, starts decomposing. If it's raining, you've got maggots that can also come out. That can happen within days. We're talking weeks here.
Yeah.
I want to switch to how life changed after, because I know your dad for the longest time said, I can't celebrate Christmas. But then he also said, I'm not going to let her killer take Christmas away from us.
Right.
Talk to me about that.
Well, we loved Christmas growing up. Christmas was it was our favorite holiday. And Christine would always put on like theatrical shows. Like, she was the director and she would assign each of us a character, like in a play. We did the nativity scene one year, and she'd be like, okay, you're going to be Mary, you're going to be Joseph, you're going to be baby Jesus, you're going to be the shepherd, you're going to be the wise man. And there were so many of us, so she could assign each of us a role. So every Christmas we would do that. And then family would come over and we put on a little play, so she made a lot of things special for us, because she was just so creative, and things like that. And so Christmas was always a special celebration for us, for all of us, to really just be together. And my dad also played a very, pivotal role in that too. He loved Christmas. He would always, really deck the house out with so many decorations inside and outside, and so he had that love for, the holidays. And Christine would just add a sparkle to that, So we grew up with feeling that essence, that family coming together and everyone just having a really good time, So that was something that we had built for years and years and years and years. But upon, Christine dying, it changed. That really changed. It was hard for us to celebrate. Although we made an effort. We really made an effort to keep her memory alive, but it was hard, for years. For me personally, I couldn't even say her name for years. I could not say her name. And, just trickling back to just the way we would still try our best to come together and just celebrate, something. We didn't want this to be so detrimental to the point that we as a family could no longer come together, so that's one thing we didn't allow, and we all knew that my dad, went through so much and my mother went through so much, and we my siblings, we made sure that, we were going to be there for him, after my mother died, especially after that, because you losing your daughter, you lost your wife, and, so it was rough.
And we haven't discussed that. Your mom, like you said, she just could not get over this pain of losing her oldest child.
She couldn't.
7 years later, she passed in 2009 at in her very early 60s?
Early 60s, yeah. And I say it's like she lived a year for all of us because there were 7 of us. So, like, I think over every year she lived, for each of her kids, all 7 of us, But it was something that she just could not cope with. She had several breakdowns after this. And, but in those years, there was a grandbaby born. So that brought her some joy. My older sister, Michelle, had her daughter, Teresa. So that brought a lot of joy to the family, and it was like a breath of fresh air, really, and the Teresa, it was similar to Christine, like just her vibrancy, as a baby. So it reminded us a lot of Christine too. So it was something that was necessary, and I'm glad it happened, and it brought a lot of joy to my mom. But still, it was just still hard for her knowing that Christine would not be here, and coping with that every day was just so traumatizing for her, and it seems like nothing could really bring her back. Nothing
Well,
could bring her
it's her
back.
oldest baby.
Yeah.
I cannot get over, as a father, you bring a child home, you carry your baby in your arms, and in your father's case, he had to bring his oldest daughter home with a bag of bones. I don't know how anybody gets over that.
Yeah, I don't know. But he tried. He tried with therapy. He was a veteran, so he would go to his doctor's appointments at the VA. He would talk to his therapist weekly. He made an effort. He really tried to, at least cope with this pain that he was having.
When all this happened, of course, I didn't have any kids, and I have a 14-year-old daughter now, and I just can't imagine. Even now, when I think about your dad, because he passed away in the last few years, just living your entire life, and when she talks about her mother's heartbreak, I mean, I can totally understand that. I don't see how I could, I can't even try to imagine that. So, it's just.
Yeah, it was. When I think about like what they both went through, it sometimes it causes a fear within myself, that I guess for me a fear to have children. I don't have any children, but it's created fears inside me, like just to see what they went through and how they dealt with it, and it's I don't know. It's had its markings on me, as a woman, as a young woman, as a person, and it's still a struggle for me, when I think about my future, and I remember when I first heard the news that Christine died, I remember how scared I was to even walk out the house,
Well,
I was too scared to walk anywhere, and I was only in the 8th grade at the time, and so it was that summer it was just. I don't know. I just I had to find a way to keep my mind on something, and that's where I turned to school and books, and I always had my head in a book, and Christine, her inspiration, it inspired me because I was valedictorian too. So, and I was drum major of my high school band just like she was, and I made it a mark that I would follow in her footsteps. At that age, I said, I want to be like her. I'm gonna work hard like she did. I'm gonna do all the things that she did. And it pushed me. It pushed me, but it was a struggle. Like I was still coming home crying. I was crying, trying to get the best grade in the class. I was crying, trying to, do all these things. But in the end, I did get something out of it. It was just, something that brought me to want to accomplish and keep that in mentally, to keep that inside,
As long as I've been doing this, I'm amazed at when a loved one speaks up, because it takes everything in you. It is a lasting impact. And what's different in your case is you don't have justice in the form of knowing who is responsible for this. Mm-hmm. And at this point, though, 22 years later, I know your parents have passed. Your dad passed in 2020. But have all the siblings just, and even you, Bryant, have you guys just kind of accepted you're never going to get an answer?
Yeah, it's at that point. And it's sad. It's sad to think about that. But we do our best. We do our best, and we just have to take one day at a time, and just relish on the beautiful memories we had of her. That that's really all we have left for that. And it's either that or just like sunk into the abyss of what could happen, why did this happen, what could have happened, but we make a choice to be happy and to share her memory, and that's what inspired me to come today, to so people will know what an incredible woman she was.
Yeah.
And I think just at a certain point, you just have to accept that you may never know, and it almost doesn't matter, because she's not here. You just have to think about the life she had, the legacy she had in that relatively short life, and that kind of helps, where you just have to let go in the sense of here we are, so it almost doesn't matter how we got here.
Does a part of you feel, or not, is there a part of you that wishes you had more time with her in her younger years? Y'all had connected a longer time ago?
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. But it just makes me, because now that I have a daughter, and now that, when you look in, Kathleen and I are friends, and I'm older than she is, it really does. It really does, because you just never know what's going to happen. You want to enjoy people for who they are in the time that you have with them. So, yeah.
And that was just one of the worst times in Baton Rouge, the late 90s to the early 2000s. I mean, the fear was real, especially for women living here, and to be a parent during that time. I cannot imagine the pain that your family is going through. Mm-hmm. But my heart goes out to you guys. I'm so very appreciative to both of you for coming and opening up.
Yeah, and I've never opened up about this. This is something I've never spoken, publicly about.
Why today?
Christine. I've struggled with it myself, and I've sought out a lot of therapy over the years, and I felt that, just for myself to heal some of the wounds that were created, and the timing of Farron reaching out, and asking, I just felt like it was right. It was right on time. And it was a message from her, to just get out there and talk about her. So, and I feel like it's something that I needed to do for myself, and for her memory, something that I can give back to, to everyone about her. And so I felt the spirit moved inside of me to do it. So I'm very, very appreciative of the opportunity to just come out and talk about her.
Wow. So you're so very welcome. We're honored to have had both of you guys. Is there anything else you guys want to add that we did not touch on? Any closing thoughts?
You mind if I?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think the thing that we're here talking about who Christine was as a person, how special she was, and I think if you look at just at that time the outpouring of support we had in Baton Rouge when because they had a memorial service for her, before I want to say it was before they even found her remains. And it was just incredible to see all the students, all the community and all that came out to support her. And I just wasn't expecting that type of response, you know. And when we actually had her funeral in New Orleans, I mean, it was a huge church. And I want to say that people had to stand outside because it was so crowded. It was standing room only. And you just don't see that. And whenever her sorority sisters talked about her and all, you realize everything that we've said about her, she had that impact on everybody she was around.
Yeah, she was a Delta. Yeah, she was, oh God, very impactful woman. Anybody that ever met her, they met the magic that she had, you know. But the funeral was, oh my gosh, and the church is not that small.
Right.
Yeah, that's huge. Like, it's pretty like large size church, you know. And to just see, oh my God, with her sorority sisters all there for her, you know, and it was beautiful, you know. So yeah, that's just like, it was a beautiful memory of her. And you know what? And I remember leaving, we were processing out of the church, and I remember I was behind her casket. We were walking, and I remember, like, I don't know if it was, I don't know what, something came over me. I don't know what it was, but it was just this energy where I had to stop, like, and I kind of like went, like, I couldn't see anything. Like, everything just went really cloudy and hazy, and I had to, like, look around, like, what is happening? You know, it was something that came over me and just made me stop in my tracks. And I was like, God, this has to be her. That had to be her moving through me. But it was just overwhelming. It was so overwhelming. I mean, the support that we got afterwards was incredible. And we are very thankful to all those people that were there for us. You know, I mean, everyone was there for us. Even afterwards, they were still there for us. And they're still there for us even to this day.
Good. You
know, so it was a community effort. It was just something that it impacted the community so much that that we were just forever grateful, you know, for that connection and you know and what she left behind, and the people that she influenced, you know, all over, and we made so many new connections and new friends and new acquaintances. So yeah.
Well, I thank both of you guys for building up the courage to come speak today in honor of Christine.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you on the next episode of Louisiana Unfiltered.